There's a doctor in Chicago making $380,000 a year who represents the ultimate paradox of modern success. He drives a leased BMW. His children are enrolled in a private school that costs more than college tuition, and he eats at high-end restaurants nearly every night because his 60-hour work week leaves him too exhausted to even look at a stove. On paper, he is the pinnacle of the American dream. In reality, he lies awake at 3 a.m, staring at his banking app with a familiar knot of anxiety in his stomach, because he realizes he cannot come up with $5,000 for an emergency without selling assets or sinking further into debt. He has spent his entire life running toward a destination called rich, only to find himself trapped on a high-speed treadmill where his fixed costs have expanded to swallow every single dollar of his revenue. And if that sounds insane, it's because it is. But it's also normal. This is the part nobody tells you when you're ambitious, intelligent, and professionally successful. They tell you how to earn. They never teach you how earning mutates the environment around you. They never teach you that income can become camouflage, that a high salary can hide financial fragility so effectively that even the person living inside it can't see the trap until the walls are already poured into concrete. So today, I want to perform a neurological and financial audit. Not of poor people, not of irresponsible people, not of people who never had a chance, but of the high achiever who did everything right and still ended up financially suffocated. Because the most dangerous poverty in America is not visible poverty. It's high-income poverty. It's the kind that wears a white coat, parks in a heated garage, posts vacation photos from a resort, and quietly panics every time an unexpected expense enters the room. Let's get forensic. One of the most revealing data points in modern money psychology is that a shockingly large percentage of households earning over $300,000 a year report living paycheck to paycheck. Think about what that means. We are not talking about a failure of income generation. We are talking about a failure of structural design. We are talking about people with extraordinary earning power who still have no margin, no slack, no breathing room, no shock absorbers in the system. And that is because income does not solve financial problems. It often just finances larger, more expensive versions of them. If you are disorganized at $60,000, a raise to $160,000 can buy you nicer chaos. If you are anxious at $150,000, a jump to $380,000 can buy you upscale anxiety with granite countertops. The popular fantasy is that income creates freedom automatically. The truth is harsher. Income only magnifies the architecture already in place. If your financial identity is built on proving, performing, compensating, displaying, or recovering from stress with spending, then more money doesn't liberate you. It industrializes the pattern. Your old problems don't disappear. They get lethal seats. They get concierge medicine. They get first-class flights. They get 0% financing and monthly minimums so elegant that you no longer recognize them as chains. High earners often don't feel rich because their lives are designed to convert cash flow into obligations at terrifying speed. And once those obligations harden into recurring monthly commitments, your income is no longer wealth. It is fuel. It arrives, burns, and disappears. Now let's dissect the prison sentence disguised as lifestyle. A doctor making $380,000 in a high-tax city does not bring home $380,000. By the time taxes, payroll deductions, retirement contributions, insurance, and professional overhead take their bite, the spendable number is dramatically smaller. Then the trap tightens. Maybe there's an $8,000 mortgage because success was supposed to look like the right zip code. Maybe there are 2 luxury car payments because exhaustion likes comfort and status likes symmetry. Maybe private school because after sacrificing your 20s and part of your 30s, you want to give your children what you never had or what your peer group says good parents provide. Maybe student loans, maybe childcare, maybe cleaning help because no one can work those hours and still maintain a household manually. Maybe restaurant spending because the job has consumed the time and nervous system required for ordinary life. Maybe subscriptions, club memberships, destination holidays marketed as recovery, gifts that keep pace with the social circle, clothes that match the title, cosmetic upkeep, networking dinners, and the quiet little leak nobody counts because it feels deserved. This is what fixed costs are. Not luxuries in your mind, but obligations in your calendar. That distinction matters. A luxury can be cut. An obligation punishes you for trying. Once 95% of your income goes to things you now define as necessary, you are one bad month away from panic. One lawsuit, one roof problem, one medical issue, one bad market cycle, one partner losing income, one parent needing care, one tax surprise, one contract dispute, one burnout spell, and suddenly the person making $380,000 feels poorer than the person making $80,000 with low fixed costs and cash in the bank. Because margin, not income, is what determines whether life feels survivable. This is why I want you to stop worshiping income and start studying accumulation. There's a framework that slices through this fog with brutal clarity. The under-accumulator of wealth versus the prodigious accumulator of wealth. The doctor in our story is a classic under-accumulator. Huge income, tiny retained wealth, fragile liquidity, impressive optics, low resilience. And somewhere across town there's a plumber, an electrician, a janitor, a small business owner, maybe driving a 10-year-old truck with coffee stains in the cup holder and $2 million sitting quietly in index funds, retirement accounts, and a paid-off house. That person does not look rich by the current aesthetic standards of social media, but wealth has never primarily been about appearance. Wealth is stored optionality. Wealth is the ability to say no. Wealth is not the car you lease, it's the months or years of life you own without asking permission from your profession. Under accumulators, buy symbols of success because their identity needs to be witnessed. Prodigious accumulators buy back time, reduce dependency, and let compounding work in silence. One group confuses consumption with arrival. The other understands that every visible upgrade can become an invisible claim on future labor. And this is the central tragedy of high-income poverty. The person with the high-income salary can actually be farther from freedom than the person with the lower ego. Because wealth is not what you spend. Wealth is what you keep, protect, and detach from your daily output. The doctor has a high-status profession. The plumber has sovereignty. One looks affluent. The other is structurally hard to hurt. But to understand why smart people walk into this trap, we have to go deeper than spreadsheets. We have to enter the brain, because money behavior is rarely just math. It is identity management with receipts. This is where the Diderot effect becomes lethal. You buy one upgrade, and that upgrade silently invalidates everything around it. The luxury car now makes the old garage feel embarrassing. The new neighborhood makes the old wardrobe feel off. The prestigious school changes what vacations are considered normal. The dinner spot changes what watch fits at the table. One purchase doesn't sit alone. It recruits a supporting cast. It demands environmental consistency. And the brain loves consistency because inconsistency feels like threat. Once you begin to look successful, maintaining that image stops feeling optional. It starts feeling like social survival. This is why looking rich functions like a private tax system. You don't just pay for the BMW. You pay for the clothes that match the BMW, the skincare that matches the clothes, the travel that matches the friend group, the house that matches the school, the furniture that matches the house, the gifts that match the circle, the camps that match the school, the apps, the memberships, the upgrades, the endless administrative burden of preserving a self-image that was originally purchased to make you feel secure. And neurologically, each purchase gives you a dopamine bump, not because it solved your life, but because it temporarily reduced the tension between who you are and who you believe you must appear to be. The problem is that dopamine is a prediction engine, not a contentment engine. It spikes around anticipation, then fades. The new normal installs itself fast. What once felt luxurious becomes baseline. Then maintenance begins. Then comparison begins. Then dissatisfaction begins. And now your consumption is no longer about pleasure. It's about identity continuity. That is when spending becomes less like choice and more like rent paid to your own persona. And then comes the exhaustion tax, the part almost nobody calculates because it would expose the entire scam. A high-stress job does not merely consume hours, it degrades the systems required to live cheaply, intentionally, and calmly. The doctor is not ordering expensive food because he is frivolous. He is ordering expensive food because his executive function has been pulverized by decisions, alarms, charting, conflict, liability, sleep debt, and cortisol. He is not paying for convenience because she's lazy. He is paying for convenience because the job has crowded out the basic human bandwidth required for self-provisioning. So let's do the audit honestly. Start with the salary. Subtract taxes. Now divide by the true hours, not the fantasy hours. Not just the scheduled shift, but the inbox, the commute, the decompression, the weekend dread, the Sunday night anticipatory stress, the continuing education, the emotional residue carried home in silence. Then subtract the convenience spending required just to keep the machine running. DoorDash because you're fried, dog walkers because you're absent, grocery delivery because you're spent, premium childcare because you're unavailable, impulse shopping because you need relief, vacations because you need rescue, therapy because the pressure leaks, alcohol or wellness rituals, or recovery spending because your nervous system is screaming. This is the work scam. The advertised salary looks enormous until you calculate how much of that money exists solely to anesthetize the cost of earning it. What if your real hourly wage, the one that reaches freedom rather than overhead, is not $100 an hour, but $12? What if after all the fixed obligations and exhaustion spending, you are working elite hours for middle-class flexibility? What if the prestige is functioning like camouflage for the fact that you have become a highly compensated employee of your own lifestyle? That is why so many high earners feel oddly trapped. They are not just paid well, they are expensive to maintain. And if you're waiting for the next raise to fix it, the brain has another surprise for you. It recalibrates with ruthless efficiency. Give someone a $20,000 raise and watch what happens. For a few weeks, there is relief, maybe even euphoria. The pressure loosens, the self-story improves, the future feels more possible. Then, often within a few months, the nervous system normalizes the new number. The raise no longer feels like abundance. It feels like current reality. Then the spending adjusts. The subscriptions get upgraded. The flights get nicer. The apartment gets larger. The school list changes. The acceptable dinner price drifts upward. The "I deserve it" narrative gets stronger because the new income seems to justify the new behavior. This is hedonic recalibration, the moving goalpost that converts progress into ordinary life at alarming speed. People imagine that rich is a feeling delivered by a number. It isn't. Rich, as most people chase it, is a vanishing sensation created by contrast. Once the contrast disappears, so does the feeling. That's why high earners can get annual raises and remain emotionally stranded in the same state of insufficiency. Their income rises, but their standard of normal rises with it. They keep chasing an arrival point that their own brain keeps relocating. More income, same insecurity. More status, same background panic. More applause, same 3 a.m. banking app. If you do not define enough, your brain will define scarcity for you at every altitude. So what is the solution? Not performative minimalism, not pretending money doesn't matter, not shaming success. The solution is far more radical and far more adult. The solution is to define enough before the next raise arrives. Enough is not a number pulled from the air. It is a line drawn with full awareness of your biology, your values, and the cost structure of your life. Enough is the point where additional income stops buying genuine utility and starts recruiting new obligations. This is the transition from economic slavery to optionality, from looking rich to being hard to control. It begins with a fixed cost audit so honest it stings. What would happen if you treated every recurring monthly commitment as if it were a permanent reduction in future freedom? Because that is exactly what it is. What would you discover if you measured each payment not in dollars, but in required work hours, stress load, and lost margin? Which expenses are actually nourishing your life, and which are simply feeding an identity that never becomes satisfied? Then, you install a structure. One simple version is the 15/65/20 rule. At least 15% of income automatically invested into broad, boring, compounding assets before lifestyle gets a vote. No more than 65% allocated to total living costs, including housing, transportation, food, insurance, debt service, schooling, and the ordinary mechanics of life. And 20% preserved for flexibility, liquidity, debt acceleration, and the shock absorbers that keep one bad month from becoming a crisis. The exact percentages can flex with circumstance, but the principle is sacred. Your future must be paid first, your lifestyle must remain within a deliberate boundary, and your margin must be protected as aggressively as your reputation. That means some people need to downshift housing. Some need to end the luxury lease cycle. Some need to stop buying recovery in the form of consumption and start redesigning the work-life equation that creates the need for recovery. Some need to realize that the most profound flex is not a louder signal of success. It is the quiet ability to miss one paycheck and remain calm. It is the ability to walk away from a toxic environment. It is the ability to take a sabbatical, say no to nonsense, help family without destabilizing yourself, sleep through the night, and make decisions from conviction instead of cash flow panic. This is the sovereignty of enough. It is not anti-wealth. It is wealth purified of theater. It is the moment you stop asking, "How do I look successful?" and start asking, "How expensive is this identity to maintain?" It is the moment you understand that every fixed cost is a claim on your future labor. Every status purchase is a vote for a more fragile life. And every dollar invested in freedom is a vote for a nervous system that can finally unclench. The doctor in Chicago is not doomed. He is not stupid. He is not uniquely flawed. He is simply living inside a script that confused income with independence. And once you see that script, really see it, you cannot unsee it. You realize that the finish line was never more. The finish line was enough. Enough cash flow that your bills do not own your calendar. Enough liquidity that surprises do not become emergencies. Enough investing that time begins working for you instead of the other way around. Enough self-respect that you stop purchasing evidence of worth. Enough clarity that you can reject the social tax of appearance and choose the private dignity of optionality. That is the real upgrade. Not the bigger house, not the newer car, not the curated version of prosperity designed for strangers. The real upgrade is a life with margin, a life where income is not inhaled by obligations the second it enters the room, a life where raises expand freedom instead of fixed costs, a life where wealth is not visible first, but structural first. A life where you are no longer sprinting on a treadmill labeled rich, but standing on solid ground, finally able to decide what matters and what does not. Audit your fixed cost trap and define what enough looks like before your next raise.